Recording in progress. We're here.
This is really high tech. I don't have any cool intros like you have, okay? Your
That's
intro is
okay.
pretty sweet. Everybody should check it out. On
Everybody should. I worked really hard on it, and I'm glad it hasn't been taken down for copyright yet. We're waiting.
I was wondering, did you like do the audio part too, or just like the
No, I grabbed the audio from TikTok, and usually on TikTok, you'll get people that'll like remake songs and stuff like that, and that then they don't get nailed with copyright.
yeah.
So I grabbed it from TikTok, and then I put the all the footage and stuff together, kind of like what you did with your George video.
Yeah.
Yep,
I do
same
I do
thing.
have an intro for George collection, but not for these kind of things. These are just kind of a laid back, get to know each other kind of session. So it's awesome. I'm honored to have the Shipwreck on my YouTube channel, everyone.
Here we are. Here we are. Check us out at the Shipwreck Show. And if you come from my channel, I'll direct them over here. You better say hi in the comments and like the live. They know better.
Yes. We
They
had
know
a
better.
we had so much fun. Was it last week that we did a live, or was it two?
Yes.
It was
I think it
last week.
was last week.
So much fun, so laid back. I mean, we're just you here's what you get, what you see. This is
Mhm.
it right here. But we both live in Iowa, and we both
Correct.
caucused on Monday night. I got to
Correct.
go to the after party. I got to like celebrate. It was awesome. Lots of fun. But I was just curious, how was your caucus where you live? Because you live in the middle of nowhere on like the northwest side of the state, I believe, and I live like smack dab in the middle. So how was your caucus?
It was not good.
Really?
It was chaotic. It was disorganized. So what had happened was, I guess historically our caucuses, Iowa caucus, have been pretty small. We didn't have a lot of turnout.
Mhm.
Now we knew that it was going to be, like you and I, we both been following this. When we knew this Iowa caucus was going to be, we were going to have record breaking numbers. I'm going to sneeze. Maybe not. Um, so when our GOP of our county put it together, they put everybody in our county in one building. And so instead, yeah. And so we had the county, or we had the districts that I live in, which there are 4 districts. And then there are like 7 or 8 surrounding towns, and they put them all together in like a Legion Hall in
Yeah.
one of these little towns. And the Legion Hall is very small, probably the size of my living room, and then they have the stage and stuff. And they had record turnout. It was standing room only. And even that was barely, they had to shuffle people down to the basement. We didn't get everybody registered by 7. The people that were registering, they were really trying, but I think they just got overwhelmed. And so nobody really knew what I think. And for a lot of people that showed up, this was their first caucus. And so
Mhm.
nobody really knew what to do, and nobody really knew where to go. And you couldn't hear anything. You couldn't hear anybody talking. So it was kind of a mess. Um, I brought my kid thinking it would be a lot more like the one you experienced.
Yeah,
Thinking,
mine was great.
yeah, thinking it would be, and it was not. But we got our vote in, and I'm glad to say that they had the record turnout. I think that um next time they'll probably do something else. I was talking to a couple people from my district, and they stated that the reason that they had done it this way is because the last Iowa caucus, they said only 30 or 35 people showed up, and which makes sense. We're a small county in Iowa, and so we're not big by any. I think I want to say we're one of the smallest.
Mhm.
Which so it makes sense. They wanted to move it to a smaller building, and they just didn't anticipate the massive. Plus, last during the last caucus, you were caucusing for an incumbent, and so you expect it to be a lot smaller.
Right.
But no, it was just, and people were mad, and I felt bad for the guy because he's trying to corral everybody, and he's getting pissed, and everybody's getting mad, and everybody's tired of being there, and we just voted and left. Man, we got it done though. I got it done. I got a Trump sticker. My kid got a Trump sticker, and we dipped. And I wanted to say that we kind of found a spot in the back because I wanted to watch, and I wanted to get some video, and I wanted to make content about it because this was our first experience with it too. And I saw it was all Trump hats. That's it. I saw one Nikki Haley button, and I'm like, where'd she get that button? Well, I found out that was the Nikki Haley representative, which they have. And then I saw 2 younger guys who were probably in their early 20s running around in Ramaswamy hats. And I thought, okay, so we got 2 Raymond, but then I found out those were actually the representatives too. So the only people that were supporting other candidates other than Trump, it was perceived to, was these folks that were there to represent them. And then I thought it was interesting too, because they all got up to give speeches. And our Trump guy got up to give a speech. Now he's a local guy, part of the VFW. Like I think he's a veteran. Like him and his wife, man, they had the white hats on.
Yep.
Did a great job. He had a list of things that he wanted to go through when it came to Iowa Caucus for Trump, and this, and this, and he was loud, and you could hear him, and he was excited. But the other candidates, they weren't. They had cue cards. They read off of them. Nikki Haley's was the worst, and no offense to her, I guess, but she's kind of an outcast there. But she's like, Nikki Haley is the best. She was the UN, and I couldn't even hear her. And I was like, well, there goes that. What I thought was the most interesting was when Vivek's representatives got up there. So earlier last week, a video went viral of Vivek at a pizza ranch. You ever been to a pizza ranch?
Everyone in Iowa knows Pizza Ranch.
Oh yeah. So my kid works at a pizza ranch, right? Like we grew up on Pizza Ranch. We love Pizza Ranch. Pizza Ranch for life. But so Vivek was at a pizza ranch and he cornered that lady and they were talking, having a conversation. And he's like, in order to save Trump and to make sure that he makes it out of this, you need to vote for Vivek. And at the time that the video was going around, I was kind of like, okay, that's pretty shitty, manipulative thing to say.
Right.
But I didn't think that. I thought he was just like ingrained in the conversation. You know what I mean? That happens. Right. But then the photo came out with the Save Trump, Vote Vivek t-shirts. And then when his guys got up at our caucus, the first words out of their mouth were like, if you want to save Trump from the establishment, you make sure you vote for Vivek. And there was an audible groan in the people around me. And I knew right then and there, I'm like, Vivek did great up until he switched campaign tactics and he started to go with that because people saw through it. And a couple of the people that I talked to after the fact, they liked Vivek. They liked him a lot. They would have liked him for VP. They would have liked him. But when that started coming out, because then their next question was, well, if they're not going to let Trump in to be president, why would they let Vivek come in and do all the things Trump is promising to do unless Vivek is a part of it?
Exactly.
And that was, and he lost them with that. At least the people in my county, he lost them with that. It was overwhelming, full of people. I'll do it again. But I probably won't be happy about it. So that's just, I don't people like that. I just don't. So
yeah,
yours looked awesome though.
Ours was fine. We got there early and sat there and like we were at a church with a nice big stage and nobody got up to speak for Vivek at ours.
Okay.
Last some kid got up. I say kid, gosh, he's probably like my age, but anyway, he looked like a kid. He got up there and he started talking about Vivek and why we should vote for Vivek. But did you stay for the results of yours too?
Nope, we were ready to go after that. Yeah, everybody, like I said, everybody was mad. My kid was kind of like, we need to go. And I'm like, yeah, we do need to go. So
yeah, well, yeah, if it's really packed. Ours was we got to sit in the chairs. I sat right up front because I thought maybe if a candidate shows up, I want to be able to get some good footage, but of course no one showed. But we got to see the results right away. It's just so cool how this is how I had a little sheet of paper. Did you just get like a little sheet of paper?
A little blue piece of paper.
Ours were white. You just write your name on there, not my name, the person I want to vote for. Then they take it and they have a card table and all the representatives around watching the votes being counted. And then right after that, everyone says, okay, yep, nobody cheated. Then they just write Trump, 80 votes, Vivek, whatever. Like you go around. So everybody knows. They held it up like, like it's a boxing match or something. They're like, here you go. And then they left. And it was like an hour. So why can't we just do that in real life? I mean, really.
That's how they used to do it, isn't it? Right? Then they have the paper ballots and you just marked your little hole and you just put it in a box.
Right. It's going to be bigger, obviously, because these are just the Republicans that came. But still, I think it'd be awesome.
Sort of. Have you had that?
Nikki
Haley? Well, so Nikki Haley had a bunch of Democrats that flipped for a day. Republican for a day was trending. They flipped to vote for it. Because I thought, so we knew the results when we got home. And I thought, Jesus, how did Nikki win a county?
Is that where she got in trouble because the people were supposedly I heard this. I don't know if it's true. It's nowhere else except for the one place we know where I know where you got it from because I saw it too. And I was like, I don't know if we could. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I won't. I need 3 sources, man. I need 3 sources and I need more information on your source other than we have a source. I need to know at least what the source is or how do you know the source? Is it your friend or your cousin? If you don't have any of that, I can't use it. Where it's misinformation is too commonly used right now that I can't slip up and use something like that and then find out it's not true.
Um, this Rachel Maddow thing. Did you see this? Where
Yeah.
okay, so as Trump was giving his victory speech on caucus night, she was on, I think MSN, I don't know what channel she was on. She was on there saying, we're not going to show this speech because we have a responsibility to not show things as a news station. We can't knowingly share misinformation. So if we will listen to this speech, and if we find something that we think you should know, we will let you know. We'll play gatekeeper. That literally happened. Rachel Maddow did this.
Haven't they done that before? They've done that before, though, haven't they? They've cut speeches in half,
Oh
or
yeah.
they've cut speeches at the end, and then yeah, they've done that before. I'm not surprised. Rachel Maddow is the worst. She's like the worst of the worst.
He's a
But
disgrace to the name Rachel. I mean, really, why
doesn't
do you have the name Rachel?
that's true?
It's
She
not
should
cool.
leave. I
Mhm.
feel like. Well, I mean, does it? I didn't even hear. I feel like I'm pretty tuned in. I didn't even hear that about Rachel Maddow, but I don't even know a lot of people that watch Rachel Maddow
I
much
don't,
anymore.
I saw it. I think I probably saw it on TikTok just scrolling. That's why TikTok's great. You get these short little clips and then I can go back and look and see if that actually happened. And yes, it
Yep.
definitely happened. She cut it because they will tell us what we need to know.
Yeah.
If
But
that doesn't
they
wake
don't have to
someone up,
anymore. So that's the media doesn't have to anymore.
yeah.
We can find out from whoever we want. And that's one of the beautiful things I think about social media. So like this campaign is everybody talks about how every campaign is the biggest of our lives, right? This campaign, although may not be the biggest or most important of our life, is going to be the most different because I feel like this campaign, this 2024 campaign, is going to be won primarily because of social media and not mainstream media. And I think that's where you're going to see a big shift. We talk an awful lot about all of the things that are going on, all of the like the false, I don't want to call them false flags, but for a long time. For a long time, they talked about how Gavin Newsom was going to be placed into Joe Biden. So Joe Biden was going to be removed one
Yeah.
way or another. Sorry.
Yes.
And they were going to put Gavin Newsom in. And everybody talked about it. Like, this is what they're going to do. And I have no doubt in my mind that that was the plan initially, that they were going to, because Gavin was propping up to be presidential and he was doing these and then all of a sudden he just stopped. And everybody kind of caught on and they started calling it out on X. Thank God for X 2.0, not Twitter
Yeah.
1.
Yeah.
Thank God for that, because it trended and it trended for weeks, right? This is what they're going to do. They're going to put, and because it trended and because people found out and because people talked about it, and they wouldn't let it go. It never happened, right? Michelle Obama was the other one. And I think that was supposed to be before even Gavin. I think Michelle was supposed to kind of come up and run. But because people caught on to it and started connecting the dots on why it's going to happen, how it's going to happen, and is she's doing this or he's doing this or whatever, that because it caught on and it caught fire, it didn't happen. And there's nothing that will kill a great evil plan if everybody
No.
knows about it.
Just
So
shine
I
some
feel
light
like
on it.
you're right. And I feel like social media, thanks again in large part to X, because we can put about just about anything out there. You just got to make sure you use your discernment.
Yeah.
TikTok is another one. Like you said, it's it's bite-sized information. It's quick, and then you can go look up the extended if you want to. But because of that, like, there are no narratives that are able to take off. The Ukrainian war narrative was supposed to be the World War III. That was it. We went from COVID and we were supposed to go into World War III after that. And that's what everybody said the first 2 weeks. Then all of a sudden, some weird things. We started getting TikToks of the Ukrainian soldiers doing TikTok dances.
That was weird.
Right.
That was
And then
weird.
you go to Snapchat and you could see like Kyiv, everybody's on the beach. There's
Right.
no war, there's no rockets, there's no missiles. And
Right.
people were confused and people were taking to X and they were like, hey, what? And then Sam Bankman-Fried got popped. And all of a sudden we found like the trail of money that went through FTX, through Ukraine, and then back into the pockets of the Democrats and the Republicans. And the whole thing fell apart. And people were like, no, we're not sending money to Ukraine anymore. This is crap. And it fell apart. We're never. So then when they realized they couldn't get Ukraine because they need the people's support in order to war. When they realized they couldn't make it happen with Ukraine, they switched into Israel, right? And they were like, oh, Israel, Hamas, they attacked Israel. And it took Israel 6 hours to respond. And all this stuff didn't work. And there's no way they knew about it, though. It was surprise.
There's so many questions surrounding that people, you go on X and you see all kinds of different. I mean, really, I don't even go there. I don't even talk about that publicly because people are
got polarizing by it.
It's a
Yep.
polarizing topic. So I'm like, I don't know. I'm not over there. I don't
Mhm.
know. That's all I'm gonna say.
Yep. I
People,
know I know that they have a history of going at it. I know they have a history of going to war. I know that they have history that doesn't necessarily have a lot to do with us. I know that Israel is our ally. I also know when it comes to Israel that they own a good portion of our mainstream media, a majority of the people that work there. I know that Israel obviously has its own agenda that America tries to align with, or vice versa.
Mhm.
I think this is
Nixon
all.
talked about that actually. I just saw a snippet of a Nixon thing that was talking about the connection between Israel and people here in America and how, you know, these people here in America that support Israel, sometimes their support of Israel is to the same level as their support of America, and a US president has the responsibility to put America first.
Mhm.
So it was an interesting, you guys can put your thoughts in the comments, but I'm not going to say anything further because I don't want people to come at me in the comments and yell at me because
Yeah.
they think I have it wrong or whatever. So it
That
is
was
what it
called,
is.
yeah. I mean, because I came out, I'm like, and I didn't come out like pro Palestine because I'm not.
Right.
I'm not. I am pro American ports, and I am pro not sending a bunch of money over to a war that we don't have any business sending a bunch of money over to when we've got, our borders wide open. We got homeless people on the streets. We've got vets that need help. We've got, all of these problems, right? And our child trafficking is still, number one in child trafficking, number two in child trafficking. And there's so many more problems here in the United States. And how can we send our resources over to another country when we can't even fix our own broken windows? And that was pretty much all I'd said. But it took off, and all of a sudden I was a what did they call me? What did they call me? A denier. When it was Ukraine, I was pro Putin,
Yeah.
and now that I'm not for war for Israel or Palestine or anybody. I'm not for war for anybody. I was a Holocaust denier. And I'm like, those two things don't even correlate. I'm anti-war. And what was I thought was really funny too is it's a lot of younger people who are in the 18 to 35 range. I'm like, do you fully understand what's going to happen if we start funneling money to Israel so that they can start bombing Iran off the map? Like, we're going to get tied into that war, and we do not have the military personnel as it sits right now to be able to physically fund a war like that, which means they're going to bring back a draft. And then you get, well, Congress had no, back in Vietnam, the president has the opportunity, if he sees that he needs to fit, in order to enact a draft, warlike actions. We don't need Congress's authorization to do it. And we just saw that 2 weeks ago. And I
Wow.
said, so I'm blown away that you would be advocating for this. I mean, you have dual citizenship. If you are an Israeli living in the United States, you can get dual citizenship, and you can get on a plane and you can go over there and you can join up with their military and you can go fight. Go do that. But you're not going to drag my sons into this for anybody. My sons have a war that they're going to have to fight here in their own country as it's coming up. We can't do this. And the
Well,
people, and then the religious indoctrination, like the religious stuff, because it was Israel as God's country. And I'm like, okay, that's great. But is the Israelis are God's people. These God's chosen people. We have to protect them. I said, well,
mhm.
we're all God's children. And that's where there was some miscommunication, apparently, because they don't believe that. They believe that the Israelis are the chosen one. And I have seen enough
That's why
corruption from
that's why it's
Israel.
that's why it's so polarizing because
Yep.
you can't say anything either way because you're going to tick somebody off, and that's why I'm like, what I know is that none of this would have happened if Donald Trump was still in office
No,
because he had all
absolutely
of us
not.
under control. He had everyone at bay. The people that are probably perpetrating the most things right now, he had them at bay, had them under control, and this is what happens when you have a weak leader in charge. This is what
Mhm.
happens exactly. And then what happens is we stop focusing on the problems here in America. Like you said, there's all kinds of issues that we could focus on here, and we start looking at other countries that we could send our money to.
Mhm.
At the caucus, I had a liberal reporter come and interview me, and it was interesting the questions that these people ask. Like they're trying to zing you with these questions, like, uh, Trump is running on the Make America Great Again stand. When was it ever great? Like, I've heard that question. Come up with a new question. I've heard that so many times from the liberal
Right.
media. They hate America. They think it was never great. I can tell you what the answer is not. The answer is not hating America further or saying, when was it ever great? So I just said, I'm like, that's a terrible attitude to have. Really, it is. And he's like, but just tell me a time period when America was great. I was like, I'm not taking that bait because I know exactly what they're gonna do. Another thing they were like, Trump didn't win the election in 2020, and now all of a sudden it's clear that people wanted Biden over Trump. Like he's trying to get me to go down the election denier route, and I just was like, I'm not even gonna go there. I said, just look at the last 3 years. What else do you need to know, man? I mean, just
Right.
look at what's right there.
Right.
So,
That's
um,
interesting too, because didn't in 2016, wasn't that like a whole thing that Trump cheated and Russia collusion and
right,
that's see, and
exactly.
you can't
We can't
that's what
win.
makes it so ridiculous is you can't now that it's your turn, like you're big mad about it. And now when it's our turn, then we're gonna be like, oh, it was elected. It's just and it
I know.
just goes on and on and on. And the media, you're
Yes.
exactly right, though. The media has an agenda that they are directed to portray, and
Uh-huh.
they are gonna ask all the questions that they need to ask to get those sound bites and to get those gotcha moments. But again, I think that even that kind of people just don't they don't watch that shit anymore. They don't care, right? They don't. I just don't think that people they look for the I think people are starting to look for the context and people are starting to understand. And it's sad that the media that the only way they can get their clicks, likes, and views anymore is by getting those gotcha moments and trying to get those gotcha moments because that's not helpful to anybody. You're not educating anybody, you're not informing anybody of anything. You're just getting those gotcha moments for your 5 minutes of
They're,
fame on the
they're just
internet.
trying to
And
make
that's
Republicans look
frustrating.
stupid. They're trying to make us look dumb. They're trying to catch me saying something asinine. And I've seen interviews where they interview somebody and someone says like something insane. Like they find the people on the far right that are like say the craziest things, that
Mm-hmm.
the craziest conspiracy theories. I'm like, of course you're gonna feature that person because you want to make us all look insane. Well,
Mm-hmm.
we could do that on the left too.
We
We could
do.
find a person, and
We
I've seen
do.
it's like, come on, man. It's just I don't
We
know.
do. We absolutely do it too. I mean, I've seen Fox News take something that was just a clip or a soundbite completely out of context and put it out there and rage bait people. I've seen them do it too, which is why I don't. You can't just stay in the headlines anymore. If you read something and you're feeling ragey about it, you got to go find the context, find the video, who wrote it, where are they coming from, and hopefully that's where a lot of people are getting to now, so they don't feel so outraged because like a lot of these like the woke movement, the DEI stuff, and they'll
Mhm.
put out the craziest transgender person who they think is wanting to use women's bathrooms and they better get to do it or they're gonna, they'll put out that crazy ass person, but they won't talk about the trans people, who just want to live their lives, who just don't want the fame and attention, who just want to go about their
Yeah.
life being who they are and just want to be accepted. And then the same thing goes for the right. They're going to talk about Marjorie. This is where Marjorie Taylor Greene gets me because they use her an awful lot, but
I
she puts
know.
herself in those positions and she makes everybody else look like freaking morons. And it drives me nuts. She drives me nuts. But she just does. And her and Kevin McCarthy all like on the congressional floor. Like, I'm like, girl, you got
Agreed.
thousands of people in your replies telling you that they don't want this and you were just ignoring them. And then you have the audacity to stand up here and call yourself a champion of what people want. You ignored all hundreds of thousands of those comments. They did not want Kevin McCarthy. And then you posted a selfie with him. Like you've lost the plot. I think you're a plant. I think you're a
A
plant
lot
to
of
make
people
everybody
feel
else
that
look
way.
crazy.
There's 435 members of Congress, 100 in
Yes.
the Senate. Okay. Why do we only hear about like five of them? I mean, I really could only maybe name five, six.
The
How
loudest.
many?
You always hear about the loudest. It's the rage baiting. It's the
It is.
baiters that usually and she's Matt Gaetz. I like Matt Gaetz. But he's another one. He's a rage baiter. He will come out and say some of the most egregious things, or he'll say the things that you need to hear.
Mhm.
And he just I've like to assume that I think the majority of them are boomers. They're old, and so maybe they don't want to be on camera a lot. So they just vote.
They're not
They
comfortable
might.
with social media. I have seen a
Right.
couple congressmen. I don't know where they're from now. I can't remember. I feel like Georgia or somewhere, where he has a TikTok account and he basically explains everything. I'm like, that's actually kind of
I've seen
brilliant.
him.
and he's a Democrat. He's a
Mhm.
Democrat. But honestly, I don't that's actually a great idea because he can just communicate with the people directly like here's what we did today. Here's what I'm doing for you. I think that's great. How cool is that they're actually he's actually willing to share that. I
Right.
thought I mean, it's not a bad idea. I wish more people would do that so that we could understand politics because the American people, myself included, I just signed up to be a precinct committee member, everyone. I have no idea what I'm going to be doing. I'm probably going to be documenting this journey. Okay. And I know it's like, it's literally the lowest man on the totem pole, but that's where I'm starting. I'm going to learn everything I can. Actually, when I went up to like sign my name, I had to stand up and say my name, hey, I'll volunteer for it. And then everyone voted me in. Okay. I got voted in, everybody. I'm kind of a big deal. Okay. Trust me, nobody else wanted it. So I did it. Anyway, I'm going to do something where I explain what this is because nobody knows what it is. I actually went up there and I was like, here's my name. I don't know anything. So you're going to have to teach me what I'm supposed to do. She's like, we got you, honey. So
Yeah.
we have to get involved locally. That's the only way we're ever going to change anything. School boards, committee members, um, I mean, or even like state politics. We need people all over the place, different boards.
Right.
So,
Well, and I think a lot of people don't understand that either is that when it comes to your everyday to day life, when it comes to your life and your house, and your taxes, it really is made at a state and local level. Like who you elect in at a state, local, at your school level, that's what's going to affect your day to day lives. And it's not going to be, the federal government. That's the one that gets the most attention. But like how your mayor, the prime example of this would have been during COVID. So during COVID, our governor, who was amazing during COVID, who is not so much now, Kim Reynolds was one of the very few governors that pushed back, and she wasn't going to implement the mask mandate. She was not implementing any mandates on the ABJ. She kept pushing, and she shut down for that first week and a half. Then she was like, you know what, this is ridiculous. Iowa was one of the ones that opened school first. I really liked her. And even though she came out with all of this, like, no, we're not going to do this. People can take their own health into their own hands. My town implemented a mask mandate in all city property, on all city sidewalks, on the school, like any of the school functions. My little tiny town did. And I was like, in the school, our school at the time, the school in the town that we lived in, they implemented a jabbed, like little booths when the jabs originally rolled, and they put them in the schools. They
oh
put them
my,
in the middle school, and then the high schoolers could come in and get a jab, and then they would get I think they got a coffee card, Dairy Queen or something.
they get a
If they,
sticker.
yeah, they did. Now you had to have parental signature in order to get your jab,
Mhm.
but they were incentivizing these kids to go in and want to get the C19 jab, and then giving them little coffee cards. And I thought that was absolutely asinine. First, because the jab had just come out. It wasn't FDA approved. It was approved on emergency use only.
Right.
Like at the time, we knew that children weren't detrimentally affected by COVID. Everybody knew it. Dr. Fauci had said it. Everybody knew it. So why were children the first ones to be targeted for this? Like it should have went. It didn't even go to the elderly where I lived. It didn't. It went straight to the school. So that, and I was blown away. I went on my Facebook page on their thing, and I'm like, hey, why are we doing this? Like, there's a doctor's office. Not on top of that, there's a doctor's office 2 blocks down. Why
Yeah.
aren't you setting up your booth there where there's, doctors and medical personnel? Because I think it was a school nurse and some other people, maybe from the city. I don't know. I don't know who was implementing them, but it was in a gym. I thought this is just, and it was then I kind of knew too. I was like, man, this whole thing's a joke.
Isn't
Like
it
you,
weird that doctors and nurses, and as far as my understanding goes, is that you could get it at like the pharmacies, you could get it at schools, but not in doctors' offices. I mean, you can get it there, but they were like, they didn't even make it, it was almost like they wanted to pass on the liability to somebody else. That's what it
right,
felt like to me
right.
early on. And I also always wondered if it was so contagious. I mean, if it was so contagious that we had to stand 6 feet apart, why did they need to jab that thing up into the back of your brain to see if you had it? Like you should be able to just like breathe and go and you on the test and you should
Mhm.
know if you had it. I mean, think about that. Nothing made sense.
No.
Nothing made and there's today I'm driving my kids to school. I'm coming back home and there's 2 people in a car wearing masks.
No,
Just
like
don't understand it.
that's what led me to believe that all of it had to be psychological. I just cannot. I mean, we have the proof now. Fauci came out. He admitted during his congressional hearing that the 6 foot rule was not backed in science, and everything that had happened seemed like one big psychological game on people. And I remember sitting in my kitchen when it first started to come out that this virus from China was coming, and it was so awful and it was so terrible. And I was like, well, if it's that bad, it sounds like we're screwed. Like it is. I thought it would go over, but then they started implementing mask mandates, and my first thought for that, well, I'm reading all these statistics that they're sending us. I'm like, well, if it's this bad, what's a mask going to do? Why aren't you making them stay home? Why can they go? They can still go to the liquor store. Why did you shut down small businesses, but you can still send them to the liquor store? Why did you shut down, these local mom and pop cafes, but you kept restaurants like McDonald's open? Right. Why did you do that? Like, and none of it, and it didn't matter how many times I tried to explain this to people, they would argue. And then they would just shut down, and they would just, like, with this blank look on their face, be like, it's for the greater good. I'm like, what in the fluoride am I watching here? Like, no. I was so astounded by how fast people just lined up, put their mask on and got in line. I was so astounded how quickly people turned on each other because the government told them to, because the media told them to. Yeah. Like, I thought, when I grew up, I always thought, well, if anything like this were to happen and the government would get to be like too, draconian, like the people would fight back, right? I learned about the Revolutionary War. I still, in my naivety, thought we still had that passion, that fire, that control. And COVID taught me real freaking quick that no, we don't. No, we don't. People, they just want to be fat and wear masks, and that's it. And they just want to, and nobody pushed back. It was sad and frustrating.
Because people like us, we know that if everybody would just stand up and be like, we're not going to do that. We're not going to wear those. We're not going to get that. It would have been over. But we don't trust each other to do that. Because I know a lot of people that felt the way I did, but they're like, well, what are we going to do about it? What could we do about it? And I actually said, well, if everybody had the same attitude you did, we'd be toast. Like, thank God there's people that are willing to at least try to stand up and use their voice. But that really, I mean, I just saw a video the other day of a woman who was a Holocaust survivor, and she was talking about that, like how, we had businesses, this is what they did. First, they came in and they started offering free daycare so that they could indoctrinate our children. Then they gave us free radios so that we could listen to their state approved messages that they only what they wanted to hear. We couldn't listen to foreign news stations, or we would get in big trouble. So all these things, when you start really looking at what's been done to this country, it's the same pattern, same playbook, same things happening. And it's like half the country can't see it. Only half of us can see it. And the other half is like, no. It'll be different this time. It'll be different this time. This is not, nope. Seriously, it's just.
I think you're right, but I think we're to a point now. And I think COVID woke a lot more people up than it was supposed to. And I think because and I was talking about this earlier with the dawn of social media, and now that Elon Musk bought X, and we can put our opinions on X without it being immediately censored, that those discussions can be had. And the fact that we can put out information in the contrary to what the narrative is, I think wakes more and more people up. I think COVID initially got like you said, like half the country was awake to it. The other half absolutely was not, and they were fighting for the establishment. But now that then they tried to push, when COVID, the narrative wasn't working anymore, they tried to push Omicron, right? And I was stunned at how many leftist TikTok who came at me because I didn't wear a mask before were like, we're not going to do Omicron. Sorry, we're not putting these back on. Like, and just done. And then when that didn't work, well, then it was war. Then it was Ukraine, right? And that took for about 2 weeks. And then people were like, no, we're not going to buy into that either. And then it was on. And now we're on to disease X. And just none of it is working because people have access to unlimited information. And because people have access to unlimited information, they keep talking about things. And because they keep talking about things like bugs in our food and shit in our air and other things, because they keep talking about it, all of these agendas that they're trying to get go in and create fear around, they're not working because the people are just like, well, yeah, I hear Klaus Schwab saying this, but I heard so and so on X say that that was bull. And so I'm going to go with that. And people are just aren't afraid anymore. I
Yep.
don't know that they're totally ready to stand up and step up and revolutionary war on everybody, but I can tell you with reasonable confidence that the majority of people are not afraid anymore. They're not afraid of the government. They're not afraid of any more lockdown. They had talked about lockdowns. Remember
Mhm.
that went around for weeks, man. People were like, but we were like, no, like we're just not going to comply. We're not going to do it. And it didn't happen. And we talk about like Gavin Newsom was going to be VP or going to be president because Biden, well, that didn't happen because everybody talked about it. I think the in the dawn of social media, I think this is how people are taking back their power, whether they understand it or not. This is how people are taking back their power by getting information and then being able to put it out somewhere and finding their people and uniting together. And I think that's one of the reasons they want to ban TikTok.
I agree.
Specifically, they go after Elon hard, right? But Elon's just Elon.
Yeah.
But like banning TikTok, that's their big thing. And everybody was kind of on board with it. I never was. I don't like TikTok. We fight. They ban me. I have to come
Yeah.
back.
Yep.
But I don't think it should be taken away from the people. I think that's ridiculous, right? And the people caught on to it real quick, and everyone was like, they want to ban TikTok because with TikTok, you can make a video about some information that goes against the narrative, and that video will spin out at 100 or 200 or 300,000 views, be downloaded a few thousand times, sent to other platforms, sent to other people who then send it to other people before TikTok can ever catch it and take it down for misinformation or whatever. It is a fast way to get information out, and it plants seeds a lot faster than like your daily newspaper ever did. And that's why I don't think when they talk about, like we talked about agenda 2030 or
Yeah.
whatever they got coming up,
Yeah.
it's never going to work. Okay, that's Project Bluebeam will never work because people know about it. They talk about it. So when it happens, all you got to do is go online, come to the Shipwreck Show. I'm going to be like, look, it's fake. And they're trying to bring in like the second coming of Christ. Like it's not real. Don't
Yeah.
go touch it, but it's, don't be afraid.
Yeah.
And because they do this, the narratives continue to fall apart. And I think the whole thing is falling apart. And this is why I am of the believer of the Great Awakening. I saw more silver linings with COVID than I saw detrimental things. Silver linings. Did you? Maybe, and maybe you maybe did. I didn't know. I had no idea really what my kids were learning in school. I had an idea kind of, but I did not know that it was like as silly as it was, like until they had to do these Zoom classes from home. And I'm like, what is this? And Grayson's like, well, this is our math. I'm like, are you serious? What this is? And people, and it wasn't even, and this was Iowa.
Yeah.
And people in California, like they all of a sudden they learned that their kids were learning about pronouns. And people were like, what in the people found out about the indoctrination. People pulled their kids out of school, and a lot of people kept their kids out of school because it worked better for them. People learned that working for corporations for 9 to 5 and killing themselves over work wasn't conducive because all of a sudden they could work from home, and now they're using that as leverage to continue working from home. And what does that do? That creates a work-life balance. And what does that do? That helps your family be more whole and more, happy.
Yeah.
There was so many silver line. The big pharma stuff. People woke up to big pharma thanks to COVID and the jab. And I'm not talking about just the COVID jab, all the jabs. Then people brought into question everything. Tylenol, ibuprofen, what's in our food? What's in our medicine? What do you mean it's mercury?
Yeah.
Then it was the food. People were like, food tastes different. Like people started to pay attention because they were locked in their homes, and they started to research stuff, and then they started to put it on TikTok. And I think ever since then, none of the narratives are going to work anymore. And now we're here, and we have, a lot of kids, they learn from home. And if they're not learning from home, kids or parents are way more involved, or they should be, in what their kids are learning at school. And kids are starting to push back on indoctrination. And we're at a point too where daycare, now we're in the economy, right? It costs more to send your kid to daycare than it does for you both to work, right? Well, so what does that do? It forces you to make a decision to keep a parent at home and available for your children, because it's cheaper to stay home and be available for your children than it is to send them to a daycare. And there are tons of studies that show that having a parent at home, and they say moms, but I really don't think it matters. Having a consistent parent at home has positively impacted children in their lives as they've grown up and become adults. So I think there's a lot of silver linings to a lot of the negative things that are going on that we just don't talk enough about. I've talked about it, but People call me naive then. I'm like, I don't think I'm naive. I think it's
I,
just
yeah.
perception.
I think knowledge is power, like you said.
Yeah.
And even if you don't have a podcast or a TikTok channel, just knowing these things is very powerful. And having a conversation with a few people that you are close with, sharing that knowledge, I think that's very powerful.
I
And
agree.
I think COVID was a necessary evil because it that definitely woke me up. I was a Republican before that, and I felt like there were things that I saw in the past where I'm like, that seems like it's not really how that happened. I think, you know, different things that you see in the news, I'm like, that seems kind of weird and nothing's adding up. But I was like, that's kind of weird. That's woo woo. COVID happens. You watch Donald Trump on the press conferences.
Mhm.
Right after that, you see the news, their portrayal of what was just said. I remember watching that and I go, why do they hate him so much? I literally said that out loud. Why do they hate him so much? That is not what he just said. I just watched it.
Yep.
So it was almost brilliant that his press conference was just before the news. And then the news anchors, oh, Donald Trump says this. What? No, they didn't.
It was almost like it was staged that way.
It really kind of
Mhm.
seemed like it. So,
I think COVID was the end of mainstream media. People lost their minds too with the death tickers, and people were just like, because then they tried to do it again, and people were like, no, knock it off, like stop it. And it
yeah.
just, I think COVID killed mainstream media because they blew it so out of proportion, and
Mhm.
and I think Trump did too. I think the fake news, because even I was the same way, right? I'm folding laundry, I'm listening to one of his press conferences just because I had it on, and I was never really into politics in 2019. It was 2018, 2019. I just wasn't. I
Same.
voted. I was a Democrat and I voted occasionally. And, I just never was in, but I'm folding laundry and I'm listening to Trump. And it was the speech where they said he was making fun of the guy, the handicap guy.
Right.
And I was listening to the conference of the speech or something. And then I caught CNN a little bit later who was like, he's making fun of this. And I'm like, that's not what happened. So then I
Oh,
go back and watch it again. Cause I'm like, well, maybe it is what happened. Maybe I gaslight myself.
yeah.
But I'm like, that's not what happened. And so then I started researching, and then somebody had sent me like The Fall of the Cabal and Out of the Shadows. So I watched those. Frazzle Drip was a part of that, unfortunately. And I'm like, there's no way. And then I started researching like um Project Mockingbird and all of these other
Yeah.
like things, the heart attack gun. And I'm like, what do you and then I had to go back to like Hollyweird and like Kevin McAllister, that I can't think of his real name, and how he had talked about like the red shoes. And I'm like,
Macaulay
because
Culkin.
yeah, I
Yes.
caught that when I caught that way before, but I had no idea that it was tied to all, man. And I spent, because we were locked down and my kids were home, I spent weeks just
Yep.
going through stuff. I'm like, man, no. And so when the inauguration came up with Joe Biden, when we had watched, I was streaming it live on Instagram, and we were watching it like play by play, and then I'm looking up how inaugurations are supposed to go and how ceremonial is it supposed to start on time, like what happens if it doesn't, and what does the Bible look like we found so many inconsistencies with or with Biden's inauguration versus like Trump's, even versus Obama's or Clinton's. I'm like, man, this ain't real. This
No.
inauguration is not real. And that was our conclusion. And so now I am of the belief that we are in a great awakening, that everything that is happening is a necessary evil in order to wake people up to what potentially could have happened, or if we hadn't start paying more attention. And I think power that people have to stop it, because everybody's like, they have the same attitudes. Well, what are we going to do about it? Just
Right.
knowing about it, just understanding it and knowing about it is enough. You don't even have to really talk about it. But if you don't let yourself become emotionally involved and be afraid or make decisions out of fear because of something you can't control or can't even really prove at this point,
Yeah.
like that's enough, because they need the fear, they need your buy-in in order for any of these to work. For any war, you want to go to war, they need the American people's buy-in, everybody. If they don't get it, they can't do it. And
Exactly.
that's why the Ukrainian war didn't work out, because they couldn't get people's buy-in for it after it all fell apart.
Right. I feel like when you have kids too, when you learn of things like what you're talking about, all those things. I mean, we've all kind of, not everybody, but I'm sure everyone watching this show in particular, if you're on my channel, if you're on Shipwreck's channel, I mean, you probably are aware of 98% of these things.
Mm-hmm.
When you have children, I don't want to get to the point where I'm like older and all this blows over and I did nothing. And
Right.
my kids say, oh, now we're in this changed world and we have no power. And what did you do? What did you do while you had the power to change it, mom? Did you do anything at all? I want my kids at some point when I'm on my deathbed, many, many years from now, to say my mom was a badass. My mom
Mhm.
was a straight up badass. She stood up, she did something, she spoke up, she did what she could while still trying to be a good mother and, you know, being the best I could be still at home. So it's like it's different when you have kids.
It
It really
is.
it makes a
It is.
big
I think that like for our kids, it just becomes more of a, I mean, obviously I want my kids to think I'm a badass, but
You are a badass,
I
okay?
think
I'll just tell you right now,
sometimes
you
I think
are a
right
badass.
now they're more like, God, my mom makes cringy news TikToks. But I think when they get older, like I want, and this is what we're teaching them too, as because they go to public school. Now we kept them home for a year. We homeschooled for a year. We traveled around quite a bit and just hung out. And they didn't like it. They wanted to go back to school. They wanted to see the friends, and I was fine with that. And we're pretty involved. I go through all their homework. I'm very involved in their online homework stuff, more involved than I ever was. And so I know what they're learning, and I know how they're learning it. And we have pretty good relationships with our boys, so they're open to tell us what's going on, if anything. But I want them going when we did send them back. A conversation that we had was the whole public school. I said school is kind of a game. I said I don't want you to feel like just because you did bad on a math test it makes you stupid or a bad person, because you get a lot of that from schools, right?
Yeah,
If you get a D, oh, that's I don't want you feeling like that. Just because you don't learn it this way doesn't mean you can't learn it another way. And I
yeah,
think that's where like I went wrong. It's why I wasn't the best student in school, but I have like ADHD. So I learned things another way. And now I love it. I love to research history. And that was my worst class, right? But because I have the freedom to research things that I really enjoy and then how they correlate with other things that maybe I don't enjoy so much, it's become much more interesting. And so we have, and I told them that the game of the school is, you got to graduate in order to get a job, right? And you got to get a job to pay your bills. But you are on this earth. Your purpose on this earth is to find out something you really enjoy and something you're really good at, and then do everything you can to be able to live off of that skill. And maybe you're really good with your hands and you love puzzles and putting things together. Maybe that means you'd be really good at like electricians, or maybe like for me, I love to talk and I love to educate and I love to learn and I love to talk to people. And so this is something that if I can make a living doing this, regardless of what my living looks like, if I can survive just by doing this, I will. And that's what we teach them. Like in college, if they want to go to college, we're open to the idea. We're not going to let them take out student loans. We're going to do something different. I don't know what yet, but if they don't want to go to, my oldest didn't want to go to college. He works full time. He just has his apartment, hangs out with his friends, and that was fine. Um, I want to make sure that they don't allow school to detrimentally affect their mental health, like in that kind of way. And that was something like when I was in school, I think it did. I think I felt like a failure. I felt stupid because I just couldn't grasp what they were trying to teach us. Like I couldn't get it.
yeah.
And so we have the same, and they do really well in school. The behavior, that is the one thing we teach too, is like your behavior in school, you've got to be respectful, you've got to do these things.
Mhm.
But if it gets to a point, I mean, even Jesus flipped a table, right? If it gets to that point, you've done everything right to that point, flip the table, then call
Yeah,
me and I'll come get you. And that's all the stuff that I wish I had had as a kid and didn't. So and that changed too with COVID, because I was never really like that. They would go to school and they would come home, and that was kind of it. Now I feel like I'm much more involved in what they do. We both are. My husband teaches our coaches their basketball teams. Um, we just want to know that they're okay and safe, and not mentally being
right.
um detrimentally affected. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I think
Yeah.
school tends to put people in a box too, because I was a good student, but once you graduate, it's like all your creativity is gone because okay, you're putting in this box, you've been put in this box, this is what you're allowed to do, this is allowed where you're allowed to go. And so and I remember graduating. I went to college, I graduated, and I had all this knowledge, but I had no hands-on experience. I had no idea how to do the job that I just went to school for.
Mhm.
So it's like you have to relearn everything. You have to learn tangible information on how to actually complete the job that you just went to college for, which by the way, not using my college degree at all right now. Just saying that, putting it
That's
out there.
Well, and I think a lot of people are. I think a lot of people go to college, they get their college degree, and then they find their passion when they're done in college and they actually go do something else. I mean,
Yeah.
I would have never gone to college for like media or for broadcasting, right? If I did want to go to college, if I was going to go to college, it was going to be for nursing, the one profession, and no offense to nurses, that I just have no desire to be anywhere near right now. Um, but I think you're right. I think it just, and schools don't have those conversations with kids. I watched this TikTok and she was like a life coach for college kids. But I thought this could be a really good exercise, even for my kids who are 9 and 11, was sit your kids down and ask them how many jobs, ask them to come up with like 5 jobs. And those
Mhm.
jobs can be any job from HVAC to, car repair to sales, whatever, to ask them what 5 jobs they come up with. And then you put those 5 jobs in a category, and that category is like creativity or like mechanic. And then you can kind of get to see, just based off of their answers, where their interest lies. And she goes into all this detail about it. And she's like, schools need to do this. Like high schools need to be doing this. And instead of sending kids off just to whatever college accepts them for whatever program they think they should do or whatever, they need to have, because I think a lot of people go to college and they have no idea what they want to do for their
Oh
life.
my God.
I was
Yeah.
35, 36 when I started this. Had I known that I could do this in my 20s, I would have went to college for broadcasting. I would have learned how to, but you can learn anything on the internet. You
You
can
know what? It's, I
I have a
think,
guy on Facebook. He has like 1 million followers. He's not even a meteorologist. He's just likes the weather. And so he taught himself all about weather. And he
yep.
posts weather alerts and stuff on Facebook. And he's so interesting and so like informative. And we're
Right.
like, where did you go to? No, he didn't go to college. He didn't go to college at all. He worked
Yeah.
on cars for a long time. And now he's like a meteorologist of our local Facebook group. It's crazy, crazy.
But that's the kind of thing that we need to realize is that college is not an end all be all. And you're only knowledgeable up to the year that you graduated. Things change. One of my college professors said, this is the temporary truth. What is your temporary truth? In both facts, but also in your opinions. What is your temporary truth? And I'm so glad he said that, because just because you think something right now doesn't mean that in 5 years from now, with all the knowledge that you're going to gain in the next 5 years, those opinions won't change. And that's how people have to look at this. And that's why after I graduated, I was like, 5 years after I graduated, I'm like, man, half the stuff that I was taught is like the opposite now.
Mhm.
It's like not even the same. So what was the purpose of me getting that? I mean, I have a background of, but I could have read probably 10 books and I would have the same knowledge.
Mhm.
It's
I
just
hope that's one of the things that changes, at least for, I don't know how old are your kids?
um 9 and 7.
Okay, so they're about the same age as mine.
Yeah.
So I hope that's one thing that changes for our kids as they get older and into more of the high school, college, is that not there's not so much emphasis put on a college degree. Because like I said, you can learn anything on the internet. You can become an expert in just about any field if you have the desire to learn about it. And you can find YouTube videos and TikToks, and there's online articles. And I hated politics. I hated this class in high school. I hated history. I hated everything about it. I failed it. And now look, like I'm all over. I can talk to you about all kinds of different things when it comes to politics and processes and how things work. I know how a speaker of the house gets elected. I never cared to know that ever, but I know it now. Like, and I love it. I'm here for it. I'm passionate about it. And
Mhm.
I hope that as our kids get older, that emphasis off a college degree is changed in more of a, I guess I don't know. I don't know how that would work when you want to get, a good job. But we watch, well, like even Boeing, right? They're so focused on diversity hiring right now, and they're having all these problems with their planes
I
because
know.
they're hiring people who don't really, like, they may have degrees, but obviously, just like you said, that was their truth then. But apparently it's not your truth now because your doors are falling off. Like, and they're not keeping up with, we're
Yeah.
hiring people not based on merit, but based on like their DEI score. And boy,
Yeah.
that, I hope that changed. I hope that whole thing, the whole like indoctrination of a college degree gets, my husband's got a college degree. He's got his bachelor's something in HR, and he's a plant manager for, now he got hired on that job because he had a degree, but it
Yeah.
had nothing to do with his degree.
Right.
Now he's a plant manager. He makes more money now than he ever has, and he ever would working in HR. It's, so I hope that I hope that part changes for our kids, where there isn't so much emphasis on a college degree and more of an emphasis on the ability to be able to do the job that we're looking for you to do. I hope. But
And not taking out student loans where you're in debt for the majority of your life, and then you're spending 30, up until you're 35, 40, paying off the college degree that you may or may not even be using. I mean, it really sets you up for interesting times, but
it does.
we are out of time. I want everyone
Oh,
to go
this was
check out your
fun.
show. Shipwreck Show. Is it Shipwreck Show on
Yes.
YouTube? She's also on TikTok and X and Instagram. She's all over the place.
Yes.
And I think you're awesome. So thank you so much for joining me on my YouTube channel today. And we'll have to do this again because Iowa girls got to stick together,
Agreed. We should get matching shirts.
We should.
We should.
Big,
That would be awesome.
a big Iowa says corn and caucuses. That's what we're known for. Corn
That
and caucus.
is. I'm here for it.
Yep. All right. Well, we'll see you soon and thanks again.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you guys.